Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of We Read It One Night, the podcast where we talk about romance novels. If you enjoy this episode, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app, and if you'd like to help us make more, check out our Etsy shop and Buy Me a Coffee Patreon page in the description. Today we're chatting about Anita Kelly's Love and Other Disasters, a sapphic cooking show soiree of a book. I'm joined by fellow book editor Mollie. One of us has actually edited a romance novel, and it's not me. As always, thank you guys so much for all the support you give us, and enjoy the show. Hello, listener. As you already know, Rachel is taking a step back for the podcast, and so we're having fun extra hosts, and some of them are not romance readers at all, which I find particularly interesting because they're going to be silly, I think. So today we are joined by my friend Mollie. Mollie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, I'm Mollie. I used to work with Alison before she quit her job. We'll forgive you someday. This is the first romance book as a reader that I've read all the way through. I did remember the other day, and we can talk about this if we want to, I edited one when I was freelancing years and years ago, which was quite good.
Can you say who it was?
I can. Grigorian, and it's called Game of Love. It's about a tennis star, female tennis star, and I don't remember who the broody wealthy man is in her life and how he ends up there, but that one was great.
Oh, and it's written by a man.
Yeah.
Listener, we ever, I'm trying to think. I don't think, yes, no, we have. We have the sleep paralysis demon book, Sing Me to Sleep. That was written by a man. I recall
you talking about it. I did convince him to write the guy putting on a condom during the sex scene because then it was like she woke up and for the next few days she felt really off and different. And I was really sitting there thinking like, oh, she's pregnant and it's going to ruin her career. Yeah. And it was really distracting. And she's not pregnant. But so I had him write in like a sexy condom situation, which I was really proud of.
We love birth control and romance novels. That's becoming like so much more, particularly in contemporaries. Like that's like the norm. Like it's like, I feel like, especially in recent books now, like if you don't have, at least at the very first time they have like penetrative sex. Yeah. If they don't have a conversation about, I mean, usually if it's like a het romance, like the heroine would just be like, I'm on the pill or I have an IUD or like whatever. So they don't have to deal with condoms, but sometimes they deal with condoms and sometimes like they make opening the condom very sexy, but they have a birth control conversation and then also an STD conversation.
Oh,
almost always.
Nice.
Although the current phrasing of it is them to be like, oh, I'm clean, don't worry, which is like, there's some discourse.
Not exactly
which,
the same
we
thing.
don't really love that, like, no, you don't really love that you're calling it clean.
Oh, not even about trust. Okay.
No, because it's not like they exchange tests, but it's the use of clean because the implication is then if you have an STD, you're dirty.
Yeah.
So it's, some authors are going more towards like, yeah, I was tested recently and I'm all clear, or like whatever.
That's
like
the kind of very literal language that I would want in that situation, frankly.
Yeah.
I would want the date.
But even, I think romance in general has been, I mean, unsurprisingly, has been at the forefront of like birth control in romance. Even just like, it was like, I think in like the 90s, early 2000s was when that first started really beginning. And it was like, there was like the classic, like the crinkle of like foil. And like, that's how you knew like, okay, they're using a condom, like without explicitly saying. Now it's like been more explicit. Now women are peeing after sex. And it's like,
oh my goodness. Yeah. When I was in summer camp, I was a staff brat, which meant that I went up a little bit early because my dad worked at the camp and we ran wild for a weekend. And we would hang out in one of the parents' cabins, and the mom had a whole shelf of romance novels. And we would just sit there like looking for the sex scenes. I don't even think I was in middle school at that point, but I maintain that like they can be very, where else are you going to get this kind of educational content?
No, They're great, especially like, I mean, they're at the forefront. There's the famous phrase in the romance community that like romance is the genre written by women and for women. And there's a lot that's problematic about that because like there's a lot of men and non-binary people who write romance and read romance and like, but it is like the exterior perception of the genre. But it tells ladies, hello, you deserve a relationship that is based on like respect and honesty, love, and if that's your thing, orgasms. You deserve to orgasm.
Amen.
That's why it's such a threatening genre.
But also that's not a huge part of the conversation we're seeing in the industry. I think about like the newsletters we get and they talk about book banning and they talk about the kids' books that are getting banned. And they talk about the older queer books that are getting banned too, like for older readers.
Yeah.
But they don't list the romance books in the same category. And I would assume, unfortunately, that's still part of like the stigma. They don't want to lump this genre book in with the more literary fare that's getting banned, which is stupid because there is no more active audience who's going to like do the work to push this issue.
You want to talk about like politically active readers, like we're doing Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly, which is a sapphic modern rom-com. Actually, like it's definitely marketed as a rom-com, as basically every single contemporary romance with a cartoon cover is marketed nowadays. But I wouldn't say it's funny enough to be a rom. It's no Bridget Jones's Diary, is what I'll say.
Yeah, like there are moments of levity, but that's not the same thing.
This is part of the like reality show romance era. There's like a brief blip where there's a shit ton of these coming out. We've done another one called The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrun. And we've interviewed Alison as well. I'll link those both below. So they're on a cooking show this time, but it's an American cooking show. So it's not like fun, Great British Bake Off wholesomeness. It's like,
no, it's like Top Chef.
Is that what it was? I
think so.
I was honestly like expecting, I'm guessing one of the judges is called Tanner McTavish. And I was like, is this a Gordon Ramsay? And he's like the mean one.
Yeah, so, like, I don't know enough about the show. It could be something like that. This one I pictured Top Chef for because I felt like one of the judges could have been almost a Padma Lakshmi stand-in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The female judge, whose name I can't remember now.
I don't know. They all kind of like blurred together for me. I don't tend to remember characters' names unless like it's necessary. Like if I can just refer to them as like judge number one, I don't really need to know.
And they don't have huge roles.
No.
They're the window dressing for the reality show. But I chose this book for the food show because as someone who does not really read romance, but like loves food and cooking. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the rest of it, but I did really like the food bits. So yeah, that was really satisfying. Not the food stacks, I'm gonna say.
Oh no, oh God, I can't.
It's the so cooking. Sticky. I love the cooking.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about that when we get to that scene. Food books are very dangerous for me though, because like inevitably the way the food, like there are so many dishes in here where I'm like, I know objectively if I ate this in real life, I would hate it, but just like you're making me want to eat this.
Interesting.
It's a really big problem for me. The number one trigger of this in books is when someone's mentioned as eating stew, like a hearty stew.
Like this, well, that's a spoiler, but like the soup in this book.
Well, we can say it's gonna be
Are we
spoiled.
Jumping ahead? The stew that gets her kicked off the show? I don't know.
And I'm like, I don't eat meat. Like I wouldn't eat this.
But goddamn, that brown sauce and vegetables.
God, I want to. Okay, so it's London Parker and Dahlia. Shit, what's her last name?
The fact that you got Parker.
I only remembered Parker because I was like, if I had a nickel for every time a sapphic romance involved a character with the last name Parker in like both recently published books.
Interesting. No, but Dahlia Woodson. And she is recently divorced and
she's bisexual.
Not that she's ever had a chance to explore it because she's been dating the same guy since like high school.
And London is nonbinary and has a bunch of sisters and grew up in Nashville and is very attached to like remaining in Nashville, living in Tennessee. And I was like, I'm not going to be like, I'm not prejudiced against the South, but just considering the number of laws that have come out recently, like since this book was published, particularly affecting trans people in Tennessee, I'm like, oh, I hope maybe you guys would consider moving to a different state.
That's for the fanfic writers to figure out, though. I suspect Anita Kelly came up in fanfic because I read the acknowledgements and they talk about fan fiction a little bit. And I was like, what pairings are we talking about? Because I did not see anything online. Tell me more.
Anita, please.
And then there's even a little bit in the book at one point where Dahlia and London are riffing and they're shit talking, I think, Cy.
Oh yeah, they talk about him.
Top Chef show.
No, Tanner McTavish.
Not Top Chef.
Tanner McTavish.
Oh, it's Tanner. What is the show called? Chef Special.
Chef Special. I did write that down because I knew I was going to forget. Let's call it Top Chef.
They're riffing and they talk about, in this case, Tanner, and like, what fan fiction does he read and what does he write? And is it, and they say like, is it Downton Abbey? Is it supernatural? And I was like, what clues are you giving us here, Anita? Is this where I should go spelunking?
Anita, have you written notes, Downton Abbey? I did think of you when they were saying supernatural fanfic. I was like, Mollie?
Yeah.
Hope Mollie noted this.
Yeah. Oh, I did.
They also speculate that Tanner McTavish has a bunch of cats. And I was like,
I didn't get that vibe either. But there's the cat scale. Okay.
There's the cat. I have been very attuned to picking out subtle cat references in books since beginning this podcast. I would say this is a very, I feel like, light romance. I don't think it gets like, and I don't say this as a criticism. We've talked about this before. I think there's a book, An Heiress's Guide to Deception and Desire. I'll link the episode in the description, listener. But that was also a book where it's just like, you're just like, I'm just kind of skating along, but sometimes that's what you want.
It's definitely light, particularly in the first 20 pages in. I was kind of just sitting there going, oh, here's a trope, here's a trope, here's a trope. Oh, London's going to be the dark and broody and mysterious. Okay, here we go. But as I have noticed, happens to be a theme on your podcast. I did want to note, London is the dark, moody, monosyllabic trope. The Edward to the awkward, bubbly, clumsy, rambly Dahlia, who is Bella. And I'm sorry, I hate the clumsy trope so much. She trips. I don't think
Dahlia, I know she tripped, but I wouldn't call Bella bubbly.
No, that's true. She's not really bubbly.
This is, I think, very much, at least in the beginning, grumpy sunshine. And even it's more, and it's like stoic, energetic.
Oh my God, I can't believe I have to have feelings. Which, on the other hand, is reasonable. Because we learn later that London has not dated anyone since they came out as non-binary. They have not felt comfortable enough in themselves.
And they have like a shitty dad, like a shitty,
very shitty
transphobic, homophobic, many-phobic bad dad. Which is honestly why I think Dahlia is a really good matchup for them. Because one of Dahlia's core personality traits for me is that she is ready to fight anyone who is even mildly mean to London at all times, like immediately ready to throw hands, at any moment of the day, even when like London isn't around.
Which we should say London thinks is like great ally energy, because London doesn't realize that Dahlia is queer because it just like doesn't come up at first.
Yeah.
And so there is a homophobic, transphobic contestant named Lizzie, and London like comes out to everybody at this pre-show dinner, except for Dahlia, because Dahlia misses the dinner.
Dahlia claims cramps, and I frankly relate hard. I personally would have claimed migraine, but same thing. Like,
I just would have been like, oh, I can't afford the plane that would need me there in time, so I'm just gonna have to take a different flight.
They pay for you to fly.
Oh,
it's a TV show. You're not paying to fly there.
Yeah, all right. I'll get lost. But so London is grumpy because then they have to come out again the day the competition starts, because Dahlia doesn't know. And London had wanted, this was like the first time they were coming out to everyone in a large group. They were going to be very intentional about being on the show as a non-binary contestant. And Lizzie does not react well. Lizzie misgenders London all over the place. And Dahlia is immediately ready to throw hands. So yeah, they get on the show.
They had like a meet cute before this, where like Dahlia ran into London. I only bring this up because London has red hair. As we Mollie waxed poetic. Mollie sent me a very aggressive video in a previous episode when I was trying to figure out what that phrase was. So I just needed to bring that to show that I learned.
I really didn't mean for it to be that aggressive.
But yeah, London is compared to having like Anne of Green Gables hair. And I was like, listen, if you want me to like a character, right off the bat, all you gotta do is compare it to Anna Green Gables. Like I would be like, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want me to not be able to relate to a character right off the bat, all you got to do is say that they enjoy chopping onions, which is what Dahlia likes to do.
Come on.
I mean, I didn't, if it wasn't
chopping garlic, isn't it? It's not onions.
No, it's onions.
I wrote down a quote about garlic.
There are multiple. It begins and ends with her thinking about how much she enjoys chopping onions. The book is bookended with onion thoughts.
Yeah. No,
and I just fair. I love an onion. Can't relate to liking how to why do you like to chop them? I don't understand. Do you have some sort of gene mutation where you don't cry?
If you have
I don't get
it. It won't impact you, but they never say Dahlia's visually impaired. So that's not a thing here. It's just Dahlia's free ball.
And I know there's a way, if you know how to cut, there's clearly a way to cut them that it's not as.
No. I mean, if you put it in the fridge and it's a few days old, it's not as.
No, strong. There's a way, a direction, a specific, a way to hold, cut with the knife. That's what I'm saying. Not one of those tricks where if you put it in I don't believe it.
With your
I liked Dahlia, but I was you're on thin ice. You're on thin ice, girly. I can't relate. I would like you to chop me onions. That was the thing. I got a bagel this morning and so the bagel order is cream cheese, red onions, and tomatoes.
Nice. Okay.
That I really enjoy. I could technically just buy the ingredients for this bagel and have it every day and not have to spend almost $5 on it.
There's no joy in that.
But that's the thing. It's just not the same when it's not a special treat. But also to bring it back, the reason I bring this up was because of the red onions, because it would involve me cutting red onions.
Yeah.
And I'm just there's already the inertia required to build up to make this bagel for myself is already very large, but to have to cut the red onions, I'm not a fan. So totally that's a very personal anecdote about my hatred of cutting onions. You're welcome, listener.
Dahlia likes cutting onions. And London, it becomes apparent, is very, very good in the kitchen.
Yeah, well, they both are.
Dahlia doesn't feel as confident though, because she is self-taught. Yeah. Whereas London, maybe has traveled places, maybe has had cooking classes.
Learned from their nanny. That's how they said they first learned.
London is
so they've been doing it since they were a kid. It has been 20 plus years, whereas Dahlia just started. So
Dahlia makes food that we'd all recognize, whereas London will make fancy French desserts without breaking a sweat.
Yeah. But that was kind of another reason why I almost wanted Dahlia to win, because it was okay, this is natural talent and passion that is causing her to win, right?
Yeah, but
not that London doesn't. It's not I wanted London to lose.
No, but the way that the show was engineered, the producer is, I would say, not evil. She is fine. She is very much, tied to this show. The ratings have not been great, and Janet sees an opportunity in the tension between London and Lizzie to make some great TV. So Dahlia never had a prayer. Dahlia stays as long as she did because she's talented, but also because the budding tension and will they, won't they becomes evident to everybody, because Dahlia's never subtle at all, just not capable of it. London's trying to keep their cool, staring at Dahlia's hair, because they're all at stations, right? And Dahlia's station's in front of London, staring at Dahlia's butt, trying to keep it chill. And Dahlia has to turn around and look at London and over their shoulder. And Janet at one point is somebody's always fucking on this show every year. And Dahlia's oh my God, who are the other people who fucked? I need to go on the internet. Incredible. So they start doing all these challenges.
Dahlia makes the fish tacos the first time. That's what she trips. And it's specifically described as rice going everywhere. Have you ever encountered rice and fish tacos? Is this just, no. I mean, listen, I recognize that I grew up in the Northeast and I don't know what Mexican food is, but I feel even the times that I've had Mexican food in California or Texas, fish, I looked it up. I looked up fish tacos rice, and there are recipes. But if you just look up fish taco recipe without the rice, none of the recipes that pop up have rice in them. However, all of those recipes are on the big recipe websites, which I'm sure are written mostly by white people. So it's I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I was not expecting the fish tacos. It really took me out of the moment. I was really feeling the fish tacos.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to eat the fish tacos.
Fish tacos are delicious.
Delicious.
But they are not chef special material. They are not cooking show material. I was surprised that Dahlia didn't get kicked off right then, because that's so, I don't know, that doesn't feel like.
Yeah, but at the beginning, when you're just supposed to show like, it's like your signature on the Great British Baking Show. I don't know. I was very for like, because Dahlia was like, I don't usually cook with meat.
That's true.
And that, because that's the thing. That's like the dishes that are considered like fancy enough for these kind of shows are always like meat.
Yeah.
And like Dahlia knows how to make fish and like that's it, basically. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting commentary. And I guess that was another reason why I was like, I want Dahlia to win as a vegetarian.
Dahlia and her flower print dresses. She's basically always in flower print. Or polka dots or stripes. She's a print girl.
So after that, the first day, London's stressed because they have to tell Dahlia. And they're drinking bourbon.
That's a good quote. Where is that quote? Keep going.
They're drinking bourbon, and they drink bourbon and whiskey like multiple times throughout the book. Like that's their preferred drink. And the thing is that for me, and I don't know whether I'm just being like too sensitive or like whatever, but like anytime a character has a scene in a book or a movie more than once where they like think about how like, oh, they're like, oh, I need a drink. Or like, I'm drinking this and like, oh, finally I feel blood. It's like going down my throat and like, I feel so much better. And it happens more than once.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
do we sense a little alcoholism?
I'm like, this seems a little worrying that you only feel normal when you drink alcohol.
Coping mechanism.
And like, I don't think that's the purpose. That's the intention of like any of the authors, but like, there's been multiple books. Interestingly, I think the last one that we did on the podcast was Payback's a Witch, was another sapphic book in which the main character is constantly like, I need a drink.
Yikes.
And I'm like, take a step back.
I think part of that is that alcohol is so prevalent in our culture that people just turn to it. But if you're putting it in your book and not thinking about that, you know, it's like putting a sex scene in and not writing the condom. You know, it's like, is that supposed to be there? Are we supposed to worry about this or not? But London is very attracted to Dahlia and says her eyes looked genuine. There was a shade of brown. They were a shade of brown that was right smack in between the darkness of her hair and the tan of her skin, making her face in general a perfect palette. Just a pure bourbon observation. London's like, oh shit, I'm attracted, but it's just the drink. It's just the drink. I'm not actually into it.
Well, it's funny because like the color palette they're describing is the color palette of bourbon as well. I do like, that's a common romance description, is either like whiskey eyes or bourbon eyes, like for like the color.
I know someone who had too much bourbon at the company holiday party last year. I don't really touch it right now.
Mollie had too much bourbon. I think I did talk about this in the podcast. Maybe I edited it out, but what? How like not about how you had too much bourbon, but how I had too much of the what was it? Margarita mix. Margarita.
Which you should never touch a premium.
And I had a bad time of it next day.
We've had really bad times, but like, and here we go talking about the prevalence of alcohol in our culture. Our company holiday parties are like, if you don't have a bad time the next day, like they're kind of known for that, unfortunately. We're also a team that really likes margaritas, and like they were made in a pitcher
by our boss's daughter,
who is a heavy pour. You just don't touch something and way cooler than all of us that's pre-made. Like you don't, which is why I went for the bourbon. I was like, I know what this is. There's nothing else in it. I don't need to worry about how much of it. Except I clearly did need to worry about how much of it. But we learn. We are in our summer cider season. They should have had cider in this book.
They didn't have cider.
Like Dahlia should have been
only had
beer
and IPAs. And I was upset because I'm cider girly. I'm a cider girly. I was like, you can't have just one cider? What if I was gluten-free? Oh, I had a really bad poop episode yesterday. I was like walking on my treadmill. Because you know when you walk like... poop will come.
Yeah.
And I was like sweating. Like
it was those are really bad ones.
And my brother knocked on the door and he was like, are you gonna be done? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't tell. It could be an hour, it could be 5 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've already like fully stripped on the toilet because I'm like sweating so much. I was like, don't open the door.
I'm gonna die here. It's like Elvis. Not
Sophia
loving that.
Coppola is making a Priscilla Presley movie. And, you know, I've been seeing people talk about how like, they're like, oh, I don't know, you know, because it's based on Priscilla's memoir. And like Priscilla still loves Elvis. And like, you know, is it necessarily as critical as maybe she should be? Like someone was like, oh, you know, I wonder whether like, are they going to address like the age gap, the fact that Elvis was like 20s / like 14. And I saw an article that was like, Priscilla Presley like says she really likes the movie. It was like her like praising it. And then it was like Elvis estate like slams the movies like, this is horrible. And I was like, okay, so that answers the question.
Yeah. Anyway, we are way off
base.
Okay, so they do these challenges. They do the first challenge. Dahlia trips, falls, tacos everywhere. They let her remake
Replayed
them.
it.
Replay
No, they
it.
let her replay
because they tried it throughout.
Yeah, because I was wondering. I'm glad that Anita mentioned that because I was like, I know it's a thing. A lot of times you either have to make like 2 dishes and like one of them is used for filming and like one of them is used for tasting. But yeah, I was like, especially on this kind of show, like you need to eat it hot. Like it's not going to be fair if like there's 15 contestants and like the first one gets a hot plate and this last one is cold. They have a secret ingredient challenge where the secret ingredient is Spam.
Oh yeah.
And I bring this up just because I will never forget the sheer horror in my heart when I met one of my freshman year roommates who is from Hawaii. When she conveyed to me how much of a thing Spam is in Hawaii.
Well,
like
know
how
what the legacy of that is.
How I understand like the colonialist legacy, but I'm just saying like when she was like, I love Spam, I was like, ma'am, I don't know if I can handle it.
Like maybe I need to move out.
Anyway, one time she made a Spam sushi and it was actually fine, but I was horrified with myself the whole time that I ate it. Dahlia also has a thought where she's like, I don't know, like, because everyone is talking about, so like, I guess we should say like what they want to do. So like the prize money is like $100,000 and Lizzie, the evil person, wants to open a bakery, which I was like, why are you on a cooking show if you want to open a bakery? Like, what is this? This is the wrong show for you, Lizzie.
She should be on Great British Bake Off, which, by the way, is a show I cannot get through.
Honestly, like, it doesn't surprise me that, like, the completely not cutthroat show is one that you can.
It's so boring. Everyone's so nice. There's no stakes.
The point is that it's so nice, but I can completely understand why that would not fit with your personality. In a lot of ways, not the, like, scrambled, like, clumsy part, but in a lot of ways, I was like, Dahlia reminds me of Mollie. Mostly in the I will fight anyone who is mean to people like him.
That's so nice. Thank you so much.
Ready to throw hands at all times. I was like, this is Mollie.
I will say today, and this is relevant, I promise. So we do morning prompts and everyone answers, if they want to, the question that has been asked, and it like gets the conversation going for the day because we're a combined in-person remote team. And today's question, because this person had never done the questions before, they had managed to escape it for 3 years. The question today was like to add up your birthday, the digits, and then it corresponded to a tarot card numbered in order. And that was your soul card.
Oh.
And don't ask me what the soul card is because I don't fucking know. But I added up my birthday and I got the Hanged Man. And I was like, what the fuck? And then you go look at what it is. And it's someone who like their core values are sacrifice and patience. And they do best when their morals are aligned with what they're doing. So that part at least was true. But like the sacrifice and patience part, it's like, did I do the math wrong? I don't know what's going on here. Everyone else got like justice and strength and shit that made sense. And our colleague goes, well, you know, if it doesn't feel quite right, sometimes it's like the inverse. It's what you need to work on the most. And I was like, I know we read tarot cards, but that is a whole nother type of read, and you can go fuck yourself.
The one time I've had someone do tarot cards for me, I was like, oh, I don't relate to that. They were like, oh, so it's the thing you need to work on. I was like,
isn't that convenient?
We were on like a beach. I was like, I'm trying to relax here and I'm feeling attacked.
The last time I did it was in elementary school, and it was when I became aware it was fake because it was at a carnival for elementary school, and I like ducked into the tent, and it was very clearly a parent. And I was like, oh, the magic is gone.
Oh no.
Anyway, so yes, I can see the throwing hands similarity to Dahlia for sure. Yes. And the eventually revealed reason that she and her ex get divorced, she doesn't want kids. Or she doesn't know if she wants kids, but she certainly doesn't want them now. And so a large part of Dahlia's character is like, she went along with what she thought she was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. She was a huge people pleaser. She dated this guy through high school, through college. They went to GW together.
Into a shit ton of debt. I was ready to fight David for that.
And this is how we get back to what you were saying before. She's now in so much debt from school because she wanted to go to a different college that was going to be affordable. She would have figured her shit out, what she was going to be. And he was like, no, we have to stay together. So she ended up with like a communications degree from GW, which she doesn't even know how to use.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like in a stupid way. I mean, she does not know how it applies to her life, but it is the degree she's ended up with. And then he proposed over Christmas like an asshole in front of all their family. So
sophomore year of college.
In sophomore year, they're not even out of college. So like, how do you, that's immensely shitty in my opinion. Like, I'm sure he did not mean it to be immensely shitty, but it is immensely shitty to do it in front of all these people that you can't say no.
Like, we get so much reassurance. So like, oh, David's such a decent guy. She feels really guilty for divorcing him. And like, I understand to an extent how she's feeling because she's like, you know, I thought I wanted kids my whole life. And like, oh, now I've suddenly changed my mind, like quote unquote, changed my mind.
And he had a
But
whole
I'm
plan.
also like, I'm like, yeah, I don't think David's like a bad person, but I also think that he's like a completely self-absorbed man. Like, he's a typical cis straight man, you know, where he just doesn't even have, he doesn't even know what he doesn't know. Like, he hasn't ever bothered to like wonder. He's never bothered to like question the established worldview. And I'm like, I don't know whether I can get behind how much you're talking this man up. It's like, I kind of don't like him a lot more than you don't. I know he's your ex, but.
And that's also self-awareness I would have hoped she would have gained by the end of the book, but didn't really happen.
Her growth is more just like letting it go.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean? Like, I think that was what was more important for her, is like her just like letting go of that guilt and being like, that's something in my past. And now I'm like moving on.
Do we really get that she figured out what she wants? I mean, we see it, but we don't see it happen. And that frustrated me. She decides at the end of the book, she doesn't love Maryland. That's where she and David had been living. She got herself her own apartment there. And the only thing she really likes about that old apartment is this rug with a high pill or something.
It's a fluffy rug. It's a very
fluffy rug, which I love. That's cute.
Yeah.
It's adorable. I respect it. I myself love fluffy rugs. Totally get it. And then we time jump. And all of a sudden there she is in bed with London at the end of the book. And I'm like, I would have loved to see all of the growth.
Well, we do get that she's like writing, she's like freelancing, and then she's also like working at Vanderbilt, I think, to like actually pay the bills. I mean, maybe it is also because I'm more of a romance reader, but I think for me, like, I didn't need to see her figure all that shit out because for me, the arc that I needed to see in her character was she begins the book stuck in a rut. Like, she's paralyzed and she is she's not even making moves to move forward. And by the end of the book, she is like, let go of her pride. She's like, I'm moving back home. I'm not going to be ashamed of that. Like, I'm starting over. I'm doing what I need to do.
Very millennial.
And I've finally like allowed myself to start moving forward and like actually explore what I want. You know what I mean? Like, that was the growth for me. I didn't like, and I was able to believe, okay, now that she has started this journey, like I believe that she will get to the end of it. I did relate very hard to when she was thinking about, she was like, I don't know if I want to make cooking a career because like then I may like not like it anymore. And I was like, oh, hard relate to like monetizing your hobbies. I get that.
Totally get that.
Ooh, get that a lot.
Oh, I had a question. So obviously you read the audiobook, listened to the audiobook. So I want to know how that was. And also, like, when you listen to the audiobooks, are you seeing the scenes in full? Like, how does that work for you? Because like, for me, I particularly thought of this during it's one of the second challenge. They have to basically cater a bar mitzvah. And they talk about, you know, this room that they're all in. it was a very visceral scene for me in that I pictured them in the ballroom of my synagogue. And like I knew exactly where I would set them up and how I would set them up and what the screens would be to block them off from everybody else. And like it was like a little too much detail. I was just so my brain was like, oh, it's a Jewish event, ready to go.
I filled this in.
So I want to know, like, what do you picture? And then also, what does the audiobook do in that case? And also, how are the actors in this one?
Well, it was just the one audiobook narrator.
Okay.
And she was good, except for the fact that she pronounced the word one like Juan. She said Juan, and I hated it. She's not the only audiobook narrator that I've ever encountered that has done that. But there are sometimes audiobook narrators just have stupid pronunciations. For example, in the book Red, White, and Royal Blue, the audiobook narrator pronounced David Bowie. And at first it's because
producer should catch that.
It's because one of the characters has a dog named David Bowie. And so I was like, oh, it's David Bowie, like bow, wow, wow. No.
That would be cute.
No, because at one point he says David Bowie in a not dog context. Shit. And I was ready to gaslight myself. I was like, I'm American. Maybe we just pronounced David Bowie's name wrong. No, I looked up an interview where David Bowie was explaining how to pronounce his name, and he named his daughter Zoe. So it's Zoe Bowie. So like, it's not Zowie.
Zowie.
But in terms of picture, I mean, it doesn't really affect like audiobook versus reading with my eyeballs. Like I get a very like rough sketch of things, and it's something where it's like, oh, I've been somewhere like that, then I'll just like imagine that. But like even just like characters, like you tell me their hair color and their eye color, and then it's just like skin colored blob with like two orb blobs of eye and blob on top of like I don't picture.
Oh, who we haven't talked about is, so obviously there are other contestants on the show. The only two who are really relevant are Barbara, who's this grandmother-like figure who befriends Dahlia, also becomes the catalyst for London realizing they have feelings, which we love.
I think Barbara did it for both of them too. Like for Dahlia and London, she's like,
we don't have time to fuck around here. And then there's Kathy, who is described as like the other queer person on the show. She's like visibly queer and like gives a head nod of recognition when London outs themselves at the dinner or whatever. I felt Kathy was criminally underused. I think Barbara gets some good airtime, but Kathy, like, man, I wanted more.
Yeah, but I like when characters have friends.
Yeah.
It's nice. I like that. Or if they don't have friends, I want them to have a specific reason why they don't have friends.
Which Dahlia does. Her life has been
because all of her bitch ass friends chose David. Like, fuck her friends. I'm gonna fight them too. I'm gonna fight David and I'm gonna fight them. Get in line, assholes.
Just go down the row.
Yeah, listen, just one slap after the other. One thing I did like also about this book was the fact that no, that's too good for them. Was the fact that like I feel like dancing, I don't even think you need to be a romance reader to know this, that like dancing is like such like it's like the number one metaphor for like compatibility.
Sure.
Like, I think like cooking, I think is only second to dancing in terms of like cooking is just dancing with food. Like, and the fact that there's so many scenes where they're like in sync together cooking, and they're like
they start working on each other's dishes.
Yeah, like Dahlia's constantly spoon feeding London shit, and the viewers at home are eating it up. Like,
and it's definitely true because Dahlia talks about, and I think you said this too, it's a way for her to regain control after her relationship. She talks about it with London and talks about how there were moments post-divorce where like she couldn't even get off the couch, and they're talking about comfort foods. And I recently fucked this up at a picnic, so it really resonated with me. The picnic prompt was like, bring a childhood comfort food. And so I brought this recipe that I love, which is chickpeas and chorizo and garlic. I made a whole thing because I thought it was like a potluck, and she meant like Rice Krispie treats. So I showed up with like this container.
Is Rice Krispie treats and London's is broccoli. Or Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, so that was humiliating, which is a great reason to really check the instructions on an invite when you get one. Yes, her comfort food is Rice Krispie treats. London's is Brussels sprouts, which is like
roasted Brussels sprouts.
As someone who loves Brussels sprouts, that's still gross.
We've talked about this on the podcast, how Brussels sprouts get such an unfair
No, they're
reputation
delicious.
because we grew up boiling them and boiled Brussels
Your
sprouts.
family boiled.
My dad did, but no, I don't think you understand how common, particularly among like white America, but I think just Americans in general, how boiling vegetables is so many
Yes.
people's like
Or
go-to cooking method, and how that is literally the least tasty way to cook anything but like corn. Steamed corn, like I'll steam a corn on the cob. Yeah, no, we grew up with boiled vegetables and it smells like ass. It tastes like ass. They're horrible. I hate them. And then someone introduced me to roasted vegetables and I was like, these are fucking delicious. Even my grandma was like, oh, I've never really liked Brussels sprouts before.
So that's London's. But I agree with Dahlia, who is like, that's not actually a comfort food because it requires too much effort. And like, if you can't get off the couch, you can't make Brussels sprouts. And I think she's very right about that. It's not a depression
food. I mean, London in general, with the exception of their body dysmorphia and like gender dysmorphia, which is obviously not a trivial thing. No. But London's life in general has like, London really hasn't experienced any hardship. No. Like the first real hardship they experienced was their dad being an absolute dick about like their transition. Yeah. Basically, listener, it's a cooking show. They cook and then they have fun weekends where they go on little dates like by themselves. At one point they milk cows and like Dahlia is very excited about the milking cows and London is very hating about the milking cows. And I'm going to be honest, like, I don't know which one I would be.
No, cows fucking suck. Have you ever been near a cow? I feel like we've had this conversation, but I can't
remember. I've been near a cow. I've never milked.
They're gross. They have bugs all over their faces all the time. And
horses.
No, that's not true.
You're like, don't talk about horses like that.
Certified horse girl. Won't hear slander.
Oh no. But I was just thinking, I was like, I don't know whether I'd be like, ideally, like conceptually, milking the cow sounds exciting, but like in real life, like I think that maybe I would be like, well, I couldn't decide. I was like, who would I be in this situation?
Get stepped on, foot broken, tragedy, written off the show immediately.
Oh. Yeah, they have the moment where they steal alcohol, they gate crash a wedding, and then they steal
that
alcohol.
Was very cute. That was too much alcohol, but it was very cute.
It was too much alcohol.
Like Dahlia steals a bottle for each of them, and I was like,
yeah. Dahlia takes a bottle of white, and like London's like, white wine is like horrible. And I was just like, I need people to start acknowledging that in blind taste tests, there's no difference. But like, you can't actually taste the difference in wine. Red, white, like it doesn't matter. Like maybe if it's like an extra sweet versus an extra dry, you can be like, this one's super sweet and this one's super dry. But otherwise, blind taste test, like 99, even with like sommeliers, like people who are supposed to really be able to know.
I'm a rosé bitch, so I am uncultured swine.
Okay. Anyway, this was a very cute scene. And this is where they bring about Tanner McTavish having cats. So this is the point in my notes in which I wrote this down, bringing this up. Like, this is a cute scene. And I know that they don't actually fuck after this. Like, London just, well, but that's the thing. It's like, I know they don't fuck, but London throughout this entire scene is constantly having thoughts of like, are we going to fuck? Are we going to, you know what I mean? And it's never like, oh, I want to fuck, but like she's too drunk and so I'm not going to do it. And that made me really uncomfy and kind of like put a little stain on the scene. The fact that like I just feel like I was like, London, like I understand that you're horny and like I can accept that like you want to fuck, but I feel like you're not really, there's never a time when they are like, but I know I can't. Until the moment Dahlia shuts the hotel room door in their face.
Yeah.
They are still are like, is this gonna happen?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want it to happen. I don't want it to happen, London. She's drank a whole bottle of wine. I know what that's like. Did that at a Seder one time. And I had a bad day afterward.
The 4 cups of wine at a Seder are a suggestion. You just do sips.
That was communicated, except that the person that was hosting it in her college dorm was like, we're all going to do a glass each time.
Wow. They
like
suck.
Each of you are bringing your own bottle.
Honestly, I think the first time my brother hosted a Seder, he did the same thing. But that's because he discovered Manischewitz and he didn't know that sugary wine gets you more fucked up. And he was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever had in my life. And then it was no longer the greatest thing he'd ever had in his life.
Dahlia the next day has to have Barbara being like, girl, London wants to fuck you. Like, it's really obvious to everyone here.
What?
Oh, this is also when we get introduced about London's dad and like him not accepting their identity. And I just would like to say that like, if my husband, like this has been going on for 3 years, right? And I like, if my husband were doing that to one of my, like, it would be divorce.
Instant. And that comes up later. London has a conversation with their mom and is like, oh my God, because London's mom is just over it. It's been 3 years. And they go to a restaurant and London's dad acts a fool.
He gets drunk and is like just an absolute asshole.
And he wouldn't even, I mean, he would have done it sober too. We get the impression.
Yes.
And then London and their mom have a whole conversation. And London gets like this horrible sinking realization. It's like, oh my God, are you divorcing dad? Is this because of me? And London's mom's like, don't even worry about it. If we're getting divorced, it's going to be utterly my decision. It has nothing to do, except it has everything to do, but nothing to do with you, kind of thing. Like, you did not break up our marriage.
It's like he's shown his true colors. That's like a theme.
Everyone's divorced.
But specifically about like whose decision it is to divorce. Because Dahlia makes the decision to divorce David, and then later, so Dahlia has like a fraught relationship with her mom or whatever.
Right. Which Dahlia thinks is triggered by the divorce and disappointing her mother's expectations.
Yes. Because her mom, listen, and her mom at the end, they had this whole heart to heart. Her mom's like, I'm going to therapy. And I was like, we love healing generational trauma.
There were some very healing conversations this author wrote in the book.
But the mom is like, Dahlia has this realization where she's like, oh, the divorce wasn't my mom's choice. Like, my mom would not have gotten divorced if it were just up to her. That was interesting. And so that's like a common theme of like who makes the decision and like what's the fallout of that.
I feel like it is possible that Anita wrote some of these conversations to sort of, for readers, if they don't have these relationships with their parents, to find them here. Like, they felt right in the book, but they also felt deliberate. I listened to an interview that Anita did.
Oh, you really did your research.
In that you said, can we start recording half an hour late? And I was like, great. Yes. Let me Google all the stuff that I meant to. It's a great opportunity. But Anita talks about like, they are non-binary, but they are femme presenting. And so they had concerns writing London, because while they understand some of the non-binary experience, London, Anita defines as trans masc presenting. Yeah. And so...
yeah, they're on testosterone.
Right. So not even presenting, just trans masc. And so Anita was a little concerned and talked about how, like, in the pitching process, one of the editors actually passed on the book because it wasn't one of the hashtag own voices. Like, that was not how they were positioning it. And this editor said, you know, we've never published a non-binary writer writing non-binary characters yet, and we want to make sure that it like matches up as the first book that we're doing. We want to do it right, so to speak, which Anita didn't love. And that feels kind of like, I understand they were being overly careful to the point of like closing an opportunity. And Anita talks about one of their mentors is non-binary, read this, gave really helpful notes. And then when they were working with their editor at Forever, who we should flag.
Who is it?
It's Junessa Valoria. But Forever also hired a sensitivity reader. And, you know, Anita talked about like, they find it really important to portray queer love in all its infinite possibilities. And that this own voices conversation, and it can get a little constricting in some ways, but they wanted to make sure that they were presenting the book in a way that felt authentic.
I have seen discussions about the kind of issues with like voices and like marginalized voice, about how like there is this expectation of like all like non-marginalized or like hegemonic identity people are like that in different ways, whereas all marginalized people are marginalized in the same way. And like, if you like how like people will be like, you know, like an author of color will write a story, and then like a lot of times people are like, this wasn't good representation or whatever, because it didn't fit to like an archetype of like yeah. So they go to the beach, and this is when they start kissing, and the kiss is interrupted by Dahlia's hair, and then London is being a coward and overthinking things, and is like, we're at a show, we can't do this. And then Dahlia skinny dips, and I was like, I love that Dahlia, it seems to be a pattern that her response to London like being overly logical and like freaking out is to just take her shirt off. And like, it works every time. It works every time. The first time they have sex, London's like, oh, I don't know whether we should do this. And Dahlia just whoop. She's like, here are my titties. Let's go. And London's like,
apparently they're good ones.
Good. You know what? That argument makes sense. That you're starting to talk a lot of sense there.
Yeah.
You got me.
And then she comes back out of the water. Well, so she doesn't actually skinny dip. She's in her underwear.
She goes in her underwear, yeah. Her matching set, which I was like, can't relate.
I was like, no.
Can't relate.
Also, like, You wore these to go to the beach with London? Dahlia. Okay. Just like wearing a bathing suit. Jesus.
Listen, as someone who has swum in the ocean in my underwear and had fun times, there's an appeal. That's all I'll have to say.
Sure.
Move on.
But so she comes out and she now has the wet bra and the wet underwear and makes the very reasonable point. Well, she's funny. She goes, okay, now actually close your eyes. And London's like, what the fuck? And Dahlia's like, I'm going to change. I can't wear this wet stuff in the car the whole way back. I'll chafe.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fair point. So then London closes their eyes. And a minute later, they felt something cold and wet slap their hand. They almost screamed. It's so relatable. I was like, is this a fish? Is this Dahlia's wet hair? No, listeners. London closed their fingers around the soaked underwire of Dahlia's discarded bra.
And then she opens her eyes and she's like, I can see her nips and her areolas through her t-shirt. And
the choice of being like the areola specifically.
Honestly, I was like, I'm a fan. Because listen, because if it's just like, oh, I can see her nips, because then that could just be like,
it implies
she's a little cold, her nips are a little hard. But like you can see the areolas, then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can see.
It's a white t-shirt, listeners.
Listen, that's another white t-shirt, wet white t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
My first introduction to that trope was a fan fiction where the characters are having sex in some like underground tunnel. I don't know. It's a secret hideout. He takes out his wand and like sprays her like white button so that it's like see-through.
Well, it's educational. But so then obviously London's freaking the fuck out. Dahlia has also taken off her underwear, which I don't think she makes London hold. But she was doing a weird little dance, squatting up and down. Huh, she said. Unsurprisingly, this might chafe too, but it's not too bad. Dahlia, London said, pained. Can you stop moving around, please? Their brain had been short-circuiting for long minutes now, but watching Dahlia squat around the beach, testing out how her jean shorts felt against her labia, all while they still held her wet bra, was going to actually terminate the functionality of London's existence. And you know, I fucking loved that. I was like, where else are we going to get the reality? This is so true.
I feel represented, TM.
No. I have a friend who used to go commando when she ran out of underwear in college. And was like, how the fuck? Like,
I could see that in like
in jeans,
in bike shorts, or like the like running shorts that have the built-in underwear.
Yeah, but no, this was just, she was like, yeah, it's day 3. I really need to do laundry. And I was like, please.
That's too much. That's
the burn. I can't even.
Anyway, they eventually get over each other and they eventually have sex and they fuck, and Dahlia takes her shirt off as the classic lesbian seduction technique. Just showing your titties, and there we go. That's all you really need to do.
I mean, understandable.
And truly. They fuck. Sometime later, they fuck again, and they do food play, and it's horrible. I'm sure it's not horrible for some people, but for me, it's horrible. I do appreciate that there is at one point at the end when I think like Dahlia is giving London a back massage and like is using fruit juice, but I chose to ignore that. I was just like, I could be just sticky to like a sexy sapphic woman giving me a back massage as foreplay.
But you
like
should
that.
Use something that's meant for massaging.
But then they go to sleep. They fall asleep and they don't take a shower until they wake up. They fall asleep in the sticky. And you know what? They had another bed. They could have just taken a shower and gone to the other person's room. Yeah. And then this is when Janet, sleazy producer, is a sleazy producer. Dahlia gets an advantage in one of the challenges. And like her and the other 3 people that got an advantage have to like choose which of like the people who didn't get an advantage gets to be safe, or like which one, and then which one gets a disadvantage. And like Lizzie's like, I guess, homophobic crony / like henchman is like arguing for Lizzie to like be safe, and then London to get the disadvantage. And then like it ends up being that like Lizzie's safe, but like the other poor Ahmed gets the disadvantage and, you know, gets eliminated.
And London gets really upset.
But they work it out. And then they watch Mamma Mia too.
Which I've never seen.
Oh, you should.
I don't know. I misread the trailer and I was convinced that there was time travel, and that's how they were like, God forbid it's just a movie with flashbacks. I was convinced that like there was some sort of, I don't know, they wander into a cave, this beautiful Greek island, and they're in the past.
I mean,
and I was very convinced. And I mentioned it in an editorial meeting in front of our publisher at the time. And he just kind of looked at me. And I repeated it because I thought maybe he hadn't heard me.
Oh.
And he just looked at me and he kind of smiled a little bit. And then he like talked to somebody else. And I felt like the stupidest motherfucker on the planet.
No.
And, you know, my therapist says, well, do you think maybe he didn't acknowledge it because he didn't want anyone else to notice that you were making a mistake and he was trying to be kind? And I was like, Angela, he was 100% judging me. He may also have been trying to be kind. He was unfailingly kind to me. But it does mean that I have never seen Mamma Mia 2.
Dahlia in London at one point, they have a little dancey dance. And they have a brief debate about who should do the like quote unquote boy part in like the dancing. Right. And London's like, I should do it because I'm taller. And I was like, oh, I have so many flashbacks. Like, I don't know how to do the girl part to dances because I was never.
You know how to dance at all? I don't have any.
Okay. Yes, because I did theater.
Yes, so did I.
And I did it with a director that really liked to do historical period pieces. So there was a lot of different dancing involved. But I was always the boy part because I was always the tallest and there were never enough boys.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to do the boy part. Like you waltz with someone. I don't know how to follow someone's lead.
Heels.
I don't know how to follow someone's lead. I'm always like, I'm leading. I'm like, I can't do it any other way. I don't know it any other way.
When my parents dance, my mom always says to my dad, oh, you're taking lead. And then within 3 steps, she's leading.
Oh, as it should be.
I don't know what the dance is in West Side Story. I assume it's the mambo scene. So it was probably a mambo, but I was the girl part, even though I was taller. And the other girl who they had dressed as a boy was the boy part because she can actually fucking dance. And when I say like she was more than leading, she put me wherever I needed to be. Oh. Not in like a sexy way, but just well, she is queer now.
It's like maybe in a sexy way.
A little bit.
I don't know that I ever was capable of following someone else's lead. Maybe it's because I was started being the boy part at such a young an age because I reached like 5 foot in the 4th grade.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I was 5'7" by the time I was 12. And then that was like my max height. My sister was 5'11" by that age.
Incredible. You want to share ever. Because like 5'3 3/4.
Average American woman's 5'3".
My doctor said I was supposed to be 5'7".
Oh, I'm sorry.
He did calculations.
Well, I'm technically short for my siblings, as both of my siblings are 6 foot. So
what the fuck?
I'm the short one. Listen, the Balkans, Yugoslavians, like Serbians are some of the tallest people in the world. Like that area.
Are y'all at a high elevation? Is that what?
I mean, there's mountains, but it's also on the coast of like the Adriatic Sea. Like,
because you can like baking takes less time at a higher altitude.
I don't think that pressure applies to
you don't know.
Yeah. So then, they're lovey-dovey. Dahlia realizes she's in love with London. And I know you were saying, I felt like that came too early too. I was thinking about it because you mentioned it to me.
Thank you.
It felt like it was somehow only because the 3rd act breakup was coming. But I feel like it would have made sense for while they were separated after the 3rd act breakup for that to be when they're like, oh, that was more than just like a reality show TV fling.
Yeah. How did you feel about when she's like, Dahlia has love realization and she's freaking out. And then she's like, this is the outdoor sex, isn't it? Yes. And she says, London, her voice strained. Can you fuck me hard and dirty right here? And I was like, I don't like those words coming out of her mouth.
I think you just don't like dirty talk very much. Yeah. So Dahlia gets eliminated. And then she was like, oh, it was always going to be like this. I was never gonna win. So they break up because Dahlia's like freaking out. She just got eliminated. She's upset.
And London, does fuck up that conversation.
I mean, they both do. Like, it's not, But there's this quote where Dahlia is like, with David, she knew what it was like to break your own heart slowly. Now she knew what it was like to break it all at once. And I was like, you little dummy, go to therapy. But yeah, they break up and like they're both like sad. And then Julie is London's twin sister, which I don't think we ever mentioned. But Julie is like London's like, bitching about that is like, oh, like it sucks. Like Dahlia just broke up with me. And Julie is like, okay, but like, did you guys ever talk about like what you were going to do? Like you literally just, you expected her to move to Nashville? Like,
and I was like, oh shit.
London's like, That's a good point. And then Dahlia sends London apology Brussels sprouts, but because they're Brussels sprouts, they smell like shit. But the Rice Krispie treats are fine.
The Rice Krispie treats are fine. The Brussels sprouts were never going to make it because you didn't refrigerate them.
It's the gesture that counts.
It's not, though.
For me.
If someone sent me apology Brussels sprouts,
I just...
Don't make my life harder by giving me some rotting food.
In terms of a grand gesture, this is the kind of grand gesture that I like. Because there's this one, and then Dahlia, after London wins, Dahlia makes them barbecue, which was like a thing that they had. Like one of London's comfort foods is barbecue. But that's the kind of like the grand gesture. Like I hate grand gestures when it's just like, okay, that was grand, but like, why was that related to your relationship? I feel like so often authors get caught up in like, oh, there needs to be some sort of thing, and they don't like set up why that's like shows that this person actually understands their partner.
Right, that they were paying attention. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so then it's the finale, and obviously London wins and beats Lizzie because Lizzie is a bitch, and Lizzie is a little bitch baby about it and runs off,
which is fitting. We don't need Lizzie to be redeemed. We don't need a final pithy closing line. That is how Lizzie should go.
Lizzie runs off like the coward she is.
And she probably gets a lot of funding from like Truth Social and makes her own homophobic bakery at some point.
Yeah. And it's probably very shitty.
London gives their dad an ultimatum and says, if you keep misgendering me, like if you don't get your shit together right fucking now, we're done. I'm never seeing you again. I'm never coming to our family dinners again. They're a weekly thing. And London's like, I'm just not coming. So you need to figure this out, or this is the last time you're ever seeing me. And they feel really good about themselves, and they go back, and that's right before the competition. And then they obviously soar through the competition. Like, it does not throw them off that they've had this conversation.
And I like that this is all from Dahlia's perspective also, the competition, the final like events. I think it would have been too stressful for me if it were from London's. But I also like that when they're confronting their dad, they're like, I don't want to see you after the finale. They're like, whether I win or lose, like, I don't want to see you because I want you to take the time to think about this. Like, I need to know that like you have sincerely committed to this, because it would have been like, I think it would have been so easy to have the dad come up and be like, I'm so proud of you, kiddo.
Right. And it wouldn't have felt real.
It's like, okay, well, how come he couldn't have done that 3 years ago?
Right. Are you proud of them because they've achieved something that feels important on your own little bullshit scale?
Exactly. And we get even in an epilogue an acknowledgement of that, where Dahlia's like, London's off in New York or whatever for their foundation, because that's what London wanted to do. I don't think we ever mentioned with the money.
Right.
They want to start like a nonprofit for queer youth, and Dahlia's going to the family dinner like without them. And Dahlia has the thought where they're like, well, I also have like my own secret agenda to like make sure that like London's dad is being cool, like even when London's not there.
Which we've seen Dahlia be consistent about London's pronouns, even when London's not present. Like when Dahlia was on the bus with Lizzie at one point.
Yeah. And I like how that was handled just writing wise, because we have Lizzie misgendering, but we don't actually get that dialogue. Like Dahlia auto corrects it to the correct pronoun. And then after the dialogue, it's like, but Lizzie didn't say they.
Right. The only time they have London using different pronouns is when London's thinking of themselves as a child. And then Dahlia makes barbecue and they almost fuck in the studio, which I was like, are you?
Which I like. I was
right now.
I was like, that's the kind of public sex I'll accept. If Janet walks in on them, even better. Janet deserves it.
Yeah. I think I was a little worried that like the barbecue sauce in places would be problematic, but.
Well, there are multiple stations. So like, they could fuck on a clean one.
Wouldn't be clean for long, but they don't fuck there. Dear listeners,
no, they don't.
They go back and they eat the barbecue.
Because Dahlia's like, it's gonna get cold.
Like they don't have ovens and microwaves at the stations.
But when Julia's leading London to like the studio for this like surprise, like Julia's like, oh, they need you for something or whatever. And at first London's like, oh my god, do you have weed? Like, are we gonna like sneak away from the family gathering and like smoke? And there was just something about, I don't know whether it was the audiobook narrator's delivery or whether it was the writing, but I was like, either the audiobook narrator or Anita Kelly or both, someone here hasn't smoked weed before. There was just something about that little like paragraph, that little half page where I was like, somebody is is doing this based on their like viewings of like Dare commercials, not based on actual experience smoking weed. There was just something very like, hey kids, you want to do the grass? Like about it. The doobie.
Do we all remember that Dare video where it was Mary J. Wanna? And she was personified.
I remember people signing yearbooks with that, like that being like a joke from like 6th to 8th grade, but I don't actually think I ever saw the video. I think that was just something that people made up as a pun.
No, there was a real video. She was like, I
believe it.
I mean, the vibe I got was like she was a hooker on the street kind of thing, tempting people.
It's pretty rude.
It was a fun animation. It was hilarious. It was old even when we were looking at it. It was like Schoolhouse Rock
Nancy
style
Reagan,
animation.
like all straight, like illustrated it.
Throat coat Nancy.
Yes. The epilogue of this book, it begins with Dahlia. So like London's eating Dahlia out, and it like the first line of the epilogue is like, London, I'm so close. And I'm gonna be honest, I was really expecting this to be like one of those, one of those scenes where like it's a dirty ride and you think, and then it's a fake out, it's just something like funny. And then it wasn't that. And I was like, I don't know, there was just, it really threw me off because I really expected. It's not a rom-com. But even if it's not a rom-com, I was just like, it's such a lighthearted book. Yeah. I expected that to be a little like, haha, okay. So that's the end. They're happy.
They don't have a dog, but it's implied they're at some point probably going to end up with a dog.
Dahlia really wants to get a dog, but for some reason, London is against the dog, but there's not a concrete reason why London would be against the dog. And I was like, London, get with the program. I think Dahlia should get a dog while London is gone.
I think that seems like a terrible thing to do to your partner, but Hank is coming to visit.
You can be like, oh, it was Hank. We found the dog on the street. We can't just turn him out. It's like when a cat adopts you, like you can't just like,
that is true.
Take it home. It's your cat now.
Happily ever after, indeed. How did these end? I don't remember. How do you end the podcast?
We do the cat scale.
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay, let's do the cat scale.
I would put this pretty low on the cat scale, personally.
Yeah. We had the one cat reference with Tanner McTavish, but no cat language, no hissing, no purring. I wouldn't say that either of them is a cat, nor any of the side characters. Maybe Barbara. Barbara's a cat. Cat scale, 1 to 10. 3, 2, 1.
Like a 2 at most? 1. Okay.
I'm saying a 1.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, wait, so are you going with 1 or 2 for the cat scale?
Do we have to be in agreement? I can do a 1.
No.
2, I guess, was generous, honestly.
You said whatever you feel. Like, we don't have to do the same.
No, we can say 1.
All right, listener. I would ask Mollie where you can find her, but she is a little hobbit who lives in her little hole and does not want to be disturbed by anyone.
I'm just indifferent.
You will never find Mollie anywhere unless she comes back. But you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at We Read It One Night. You can find us on Twitter at We Read It Podcast. You can go to our Etsy shop, Evelyn and Adelaide, and buy some sweet gear there. You can email us, wereaditonenight@gmail.com. You can also support the pod by leaving us a rating and review wherever you're listening. Most places where you can listen allow you to leave at least a rating, if not a review. So do that right now. It's so fucking easy. You can also support the pod by buying us a coffee, which will be linked in our description. You can make that a regular donation or a one-time purchase. Godspeed, comrades.
Godspeed.
Yay!